Our next presenter for the day is Anuja Gupta. Anuja is Rahi Foundation's founder and executive director. In 1996, at a time when no one in India was talking about this taboo subject, Anuja started the pioneering non-profit RAHI, which stands for Recovery and Healing from Incest. Rahi's work has laid the foundation for this issue to come to light and continues to shape the way it is addressed in this country. Anuja is an educator, trainer, and therapist in the area of CSA. She designs and conducts trainings with stakeholders and lectures and presents extensively on the subject. Today, Anuja is going to talk to us about healing through social action, the RAHI model. Welcome, Anuja.
Thank you to the foundation for inviting us to do this presentation. And Janvi, a very special thank you to you for being patient with us and doing very diligent follow-up, because we were, as you would know, in the bane of any conference organizer. We were never on time with anything. So thank you for that. As the topic suggests, I will be talking about the role of social action at RAHI in the recovering and healing of incest survivors. And this is something that has actually evolved organically at RAHI. It is something that is a very integral part of the way RAHI functions. It's also something that continues to bring us new learning. So in that sense, it's a work in progress. Okay. What I will be doing is, after my presentation, calling in also Surabhi, who's here with us, to talk about how social action helped her in her recovery, and also Ashwini, whose brainchild this is and who's the innovator at RAHI, to come and take questions as well. So just to set the context for people who don't know too much about RAHI, that RAHI is a center for adult women survivors of incest and childhood sexual abuse. It was established in 1996. As Ashwini mentioned yesterday, RAHI is a survivor-led organization. Both Ashwini and me, who are the founders, are survivors of incest. It's also a very strongly feminist organization. And we are feminists, and we have been born out of the feminist movement, which is why I thanked Alankar in the morning to bring out the fact that, in my understanding, trauma work is successful, and it happens when there is a movement that supports it. And our work was supported by the feminist movement in India. I mean, if there was no movement, I don't think RAHI could have been born. And it's also very, it's also a great privilege to know that there are other survivors who are now coming up and starting organizations. Like there was Rubaru gang yesterday, Ishita, and to them I would like to say, whether there's somebody like Ishita or somebody like other survivors who are starting organizations, that we know what it takes, and we'll walk with you because we walk the path. So it's really our dream to see so many people sitting over here, survivors starting their own organizations, because this is what we didn't have when we started RAHI way back in 1996, and it was one of our dreams to see this happening and to see child sexual abuse as becoming a field. So I want to just, and of course we do, RAHI does advocacy, awareness raising, education, training, support, communication, and research on child sexual abuse. RAHI's work is located within the framework of both mental health and trauma, as well as social change, because we are not a private clinic or mental health practitioners. Our work is driven by social change as well. We are an activist feminist organization as well. Our core is recovering and healing, but our work is not merely to assist a survivor in her recovery, but also to advocate for change and change the conditions that lead to child sexual abuse and the trauma that follows it. So in that sense, our work is both preventive and restorative. The capacities in which RAHI deals with survivors, I say capacities because we couldn't think of a better word. We have people who directly come to us for help as direct clients, and more we've seen in the last 5 years as compared to when we started out. Because when we started RAHI in 1996, 1997, I had one client in the whole year who came up to talk about her abuse, and that also in a roundabout manner. But today, I would see in the last 3 to 4 years, people directly stepping forward and saying, I'm an incest survivor and I need help. So we have direct clients who are survivors, we have volunteers, interns, and peer educators who are survivors. We have clients like Surabhi who become volunteers and begin to take social action. We are dealing with journalists and media persons who come to take interviews or to do a film project or a media project, and in the course of taking an interview and gaining and gathering information, get triggered or are making links to their own abuse and then come back to seek help. Then we have people who attend our trainings who disclose during training. So we are dealing in practically every training, we are dealing with disclosures of sexual abuse happening either in front of everybody or aside. Then people applying for a job. I have to say that in the 18 years we have been here, we have had maybe 1 or 2 people who have applied for a job who are not survivors of incest. And many people apply for a job at RAHI as a way of seeking help. Okay, so practically all team members at RAHI throughout the years have been child sexual abuse survivors, and that also leads to certain challenges which I will be talking about later. The RAHI model of healing, or what we are calling now the RAHI model of healing, is a combination of individual counseling, group work, and social action. And we have found that it's useful for people to actually go through all of these 3 things together. So what I will be focusing on will be the social action aspect of what we call of our RAHI model of healing. You see here pictures of many of our interns last year who are holding placards when they did this freeze mob, as part of their internship. And many of these people are survivors. And often when they spoke about the simple power that they had when they were on the street holding a placard, talking against child sexual abuse, and that the sense of power that it gave them, which Surabhi will, can talk more about later. What my presentation will be talking about why we feel social action is important, how it has evolved over the years, some of our understanding, learning, struggles, and you will be hearing survivor voices, in a tape that we have, other than Surabhi's. How social action evolved at RAHI. As I said, then, since RAHI is a survivor-led organization, RAHI itself, in fact, is an expression of social action. It has been born out of and part of our individual journeys of healing. Though RAHI's core is recovering and healing, we realized very early on, this was in 1996, that for women to come in for help, okay, we had to create the right conditions, which was to break the silence. And remember, this is 1996. Nobody's talking really about child sexual abuse the way we are talking about right now. So giving information, going out to colleges, seeking people, talking to women, giving information on what is child sexual abuse, that help people make the link between current symptoms and perhaps what happened to them, childhood sexual abuse that happened earlier. And then they were able to perhaps look at seeking help. So that's the kind of work we needed to do early days. And then we found that as more and more women began to step into recovery, they wanted to get involved in our work. Okay, so that's how, we always say that women come into, survivors, step into recovery, it leads to social change. Social change will lead to survivors coming into recovery. And as I said, also those who come to work or volunteer were themselves survivors. So how social action evolved at RAHI also includes, as we started to build knowledge in the country, because when we started in 1996, there was nothing in the Indian context that we had to go by. So all our learning, in fact, has been built on the voices of survivors. And as we started documenting survivor stories, so whether it was our book, The House I Grew Up In, which documents stories of survival and recovery and healing, or it's our play 30 Days in September, some of you may have seen it, it's a Bombay-based production, or a very recent student play called Dear Daddy, they have all been based on stories of survivors, and survivors actually participating in these events as a way of, sort of healing. And as people said, that survivors, what they told us, that they wanted their stories to be heard and they wanted it to help others. I think a couple of people yesterday even spoke about survivors saying that even if one person can be helped by me sharing my story, then my journey has been worth it. Or, that a strong need for survivors to actually to help others, and then giving their story to us became a healing and a cathartic process. And for some people more, like there's a story in our book, The House I Grew Up In, which talks about an older woman who has OCDs, and she used to wash her. The story starts with saying, I washed my hands 60 times a day. And then there's a sequel to that story, because she called us back and she said, I want to say something, that when I gave you my story, I found over a period of time in the next month that I had stopped washing my hands 60 times a day and got reduced to like 5 times a day. So actually telling a story which they have kept inside for so many years had a healing effect, And then we realized that how social action can become a really important ingredient of healing. So our understanding of social action is based on our experience, survivor feedback, discussions with colleagues, and other readings. So if used properly, social action can be a very important part of healing. It must be based on evidence that it will enhance healing. So it's not something that can be a norm, but clinically there must be evidence, or as somebody working with survivors, you need to have evidence to see that, to understand that for this particular person, taking social action will add to her healing. Okay, so that it must be based on clinical evidence. It of course must be in conjunction. Decision is obviously taken in conjunction with the client. It's decision we take together, and the timing. The timing, I can't say enough about how critical the timing of taking social action is. That because if it's taken too early, then it can backfire. And we've also had a few cases like that where we have made mistakes and social action happened too soon, and it did backfire. It was not able to be sustained. Social action also encourages clients to take risks in very safe environment. They are able to make their mistakes, they try out new things, they walk uncharted territory, and they have an opportunity to fall down and in a safe environment and learn from their mistakes and move on. It encourages, work in itself then becomes a form of therapy, or at least it is very therapeutic for some people, and for some people it becomes part of their therapy. It cannot be random, it has to be planned, and the duration is good. We've learned over the years that if it has a beginning and it has an end, that's good, because then that allows survivors to also move on. And then of course there are survivors then who start organizations and do other things and then carry that thing forward. But it's good to have a planned duration, and survivors need to be trained and prepared. So only because you're a survivor in recovery doesn't mean that you can take social action without training and preparation. Okay, so we actually and Ashwini is the person who deals with that at RAHI, trains and prepares survivors to take social action when they join us. So the beauty of social action is that it can take many forms. Working in an office, like coming to the center and volunteering at various levels, whether it's doing office work, filing work, admin work, taking phone calls, that's one kind of social action, because that's when survivors are coming in, but they are coming in as survivors very specifically to be involved in the work, because they feel that being part of an organization or a center like this is part of their healing. Okay, so so all survivors are getting involved in campaigns, in media advocacies, sharing personal testimonies, becoming part of our training team and sharing personal testimonies, doing survivor to survivor work, sharing their stories with other survivors. So what we are calling woman to woman or survivor to survivor work, fundraising, etc. And since social action can use a variety of skills, everybody has a chance to contribute. So no matter who you are and what you do, whether you're a professional or you're not a professional, there is a place, and social action provides that opportunity for you to be involved and deal with and understand better what has happened to you and take risks and deal with your own abuse issues. It can be an excellent intervention, but as I said earlier also, that it can be counterproductive, and one of the survivors you hear on the tape will talk to you about that. Okay. Social action, how it benefits clients, it transforms their pain. Social action is a way of transforming your trauma experience into something meaningful. Okay, and this is what we hear in many ways, survivors telling us that it benefits us. We want to actually do this. It helps them find their voice, okay, a voice that is strangulated as a result of abuse. It gives them a source of power, and this is what survivors have said. It draws upon their own initiative, energy, and resourcefulness. They have a chance over here to actually give back and become a contributor. So where yesterday we were talking about the whole cycle of moving from victim to survivor. So there's a victim to survivor to thriver to contributor. Okay, so that's what an opportunity for social action actually does. And of course feel connected both to themselves and to something outside of themselves, because part of trauma therapy or working with survivors is to move people even out of themselves. They have to connect with themselves, but they also have to connect with an external world, and social action can become a really powerful way to help them do that. And then of course it's to speak the unspeakable in order to help the others and allow them to show gratitude and give back, because gratitude is a very important part of healing. If you can feel gratitude, okay, that's really important. And give back. Survivors have said that we want to give back. If it has happened to me, we don't want it happening to somebody else. That's at one level. Or if they are at RAHI, they often have gratitude and want to give back to the organization for taking them through the journey. So both ways, gratitude and giving back is a very important part of healing, and social action provides that opportunity for survivors to do that. So the challenges and issues, therefore, that crop up, for us as an organization, as we are working with survivors, taking them through both therapeutic interventions and healing, as well as social action, as well as survivors working at RAHI in various capacities. Organizationally, we find that we have no role model for the center like ours. So we have to therefore draw from various kind of streams. And one is therapeutic communities, because Ashwini has an experience as an addiction counselor and working through in therapeutic communities. So we are drawing material from our understanding of therapeutic communities and how to set up something like that at RAHI. Then of course taking from mental health centers and other counseling centers, looking at the feminist movement, because a lot of feminist organizations have traditionally done trauma work without calling it trauma work, and giving personal testimonies has been a very important part of that work. So we are trying to draw from all these various movements and other streams in order to set up something. We are setting it up, but as I said, we are learning every day. So working with staff or team members who are survivors, these are some of the issues that crop up. One is getting triggered. So as you can imagine, and I think a lot of people spoke about, and even Rani was talking about, what happens that when you get triggered. So what happens, as I said earlier, that people come to RAHI, they are survivors of child sexual abuse. RAHI is a center and a support center for survivors of child sexual abuse. So there is no way we are not working with survivors. There's no way people who are working with us are not survivors. Okay, so we have to, while working with them, while seeing that they, deliver on tasks, requirement of the job, we are also actually dealing with their trauma at the same time. So people get triggered off quite easily. So suddenly in the middle of a session, we are training them, talking to them. Suddenly we see somebody has dissociated, or somebody gets up and leaves, or somebody has just gone underground and will not come to office for the next 3 days. So that obviously has an impact on the way our work continues. So suddenly work and project is dropped in the middle because there is, the trauma has been surfacing. Then there is over-identification often. If you're a survivor and if you have issues that are not dealt with, and though we are taking people through the process of helping them deal with their issues while they are working, okay, either through external therapy or in-house therapy, they're still doing the work. Okay, so if they have unresolved issues, they can sometimes end up in over-identifying with survivors. So recently we had a group of survivors who came in and wanted RAHI to help them take social action. That's a long story, I won't go into it. They were a group that called themselves It's Okay to Tell group, a group of about 9 women between the ages of 25 and 30. And one of our team members who was working with them, at times would get angry and would start, over-identifying with them, start wanting to sort of mollycoddle them. And one of the things that you mustn't do with survivors is actually treat them as something very special, or people who are very fragile, because that helps in isolating them even further. Okay, but she started sort of looking after their needs to such an extent, and in a way to sort of meet her own unmet needs. So we had to handle that dynamic in the organization itself as well, while we were handling the dynamics of the women who were coming in to seek social action or to get help to seek social action. people can reject survivors. If you haven't dealt with your own issues, you don't want to talk to other survivors. Okay, so that is also something that happens. You're rejecting survivors as well. You are suspicious of help. When you're not used to, you haven't dealt with your own issues, then anyone trying to help you personally is suspicious. You get suspicious. So there are people who are suspicious of how, if you are offering help. Well, no, how can you tell me that I need help? How can you say this? I have dealt with my trauma. This is what I need. I don't need that. Projection, transference, I don't think there's, enough can be said about that. And also because, people have an issue with power and authority, a lot of that gets transferred on to us as leaders of the organization, and especially on Ashwini, for example, as a man. So all issues, anger and power and authority issues that survivors have gets actually put on to the leaders of the organization. I'm talking about this within the, with team members within the organization. Then we have volunteers who are survivors. So people coming from the outside to volunteer, but who have survivors. Oh God, I did something. Held this ulta. So you get, because there's a sense of entitlement. You will hear people say that because RAHI works with survivors, this is where we get all our needs met. Okay, so people come in. So for example, and our office space often tends to get taken for granted. So for example, there was, a survivor, and there's the other side. There's this person who's contributed greatly to the work that we are doing. She helped us develop our peer education module, which we now use for, have been using for last 10 years. But she also, often would come into the office with her child and would expect all the team members to drop everything and take care of the child. So boundaries that get blurred by volunteers who come into RAHI, on the one side they think it's a safe space. Okay, on the other side, they begin to then take it for granted, and that causes a lot of issues within the organization that we have to then address and handle. So you expect the office to cater to your likes and dislikes, and you expect everything for free. So we offer services. Our services for survivors are, we have a charge for them, but they are graded. Okay, for people who can't afford it, we don't charge. Okay, we try to charge a nominal amount of money, because we do believe healing, we find people are more accountable if they have paid something for it. But I'm talking more here about an expectation. So you are a center for survivors. Why can't you give this to me for free, and I should get it for free? So this is all happening, as I must say, that this is all happening also at a time when people are contributing greatly as well. Okay, so you have to constantly keep that balance of how boundaries are confused as people are contributing to the work of the organization and to the issue, in fact. So it's not so much about RAHI really, it's about how people want to carry the issue of child sexual abuse forward and make and contribute to ending it. So it's more like passing the message of hope and recovery to other survivors. That is what is propelling survivors to come in to take social action. So what happens to people who have been in the therapeutic, in RAHI as a client, who have come in as a client, just to seek help, and have gone through healing for what X number of months or years. Okay, the transition, and then we decide, the therapist and the client, that this is a good time, or she wants to take social action, and we decide that it's a good time for her to take social action after she has actually finished her therapy. So for her, the issue becomes, how does she transition? She's come to this space as a client seeking help. How does she make the transition between being a client to actually becoming a worker in the same space? So the therapy space, though there's a room that is separate, but the therapy space now becomes a workspace. So the transition actually gets quite, is quite tricky for her, as well as for us, but I'll come to that. So negotiating a different relationship with your therapist, okay, is part of is part of the challenge that she is facing, is part of the challenge we are all together managing as clients come into RAHI to take social action. Okay, from our point of, from the let's say the leaders and counselors and therapists point of view, the challenge becomes when a client who has seen, for example, I have clients and I see people in therapy who are then coming in to take social action. So for me as a therapist, okay, I will be seen by the client in a different light. She's not seeing me as a therapist in the therapy room any longer. She's seeing me as somebody who's working. She's seeing me as somebody in authority. She's seeing me as somebody who's a boss. Okay, so that puts me in quite a vulnerable situation. Okay, because the boundaries of traditional therapy is now not here. And I mean vulnerable in the sense of, you know, me being seen in a different light. So there could be times, for example, that, you know, I get impatient with somebody. So she's seeing me in that particular light as well. Okay, so it leaves me open, or the counselor open, to be questioned in a certain way, you know, or to be seen, let's say, not questioned, but to be seen in a certain way. So boundaries have to be redefined, roles have to be redefined. And if, so we are constantly wearing this two-hat system. So you're also the therapist, but now you're a team member, stroke boss, stroke everything else as well. And also that you are a constant role model. So now the way we need to conduct ourselves in the office is also that we are a role model to other survivors who are coming in to seek action and constantly under scrutiny. So I will now come to play. We have we have videos. No, they're not videos. They're voiceovers of some of our survivors who we spoke to when before coming to the conference to talk so that they could tell us what taking social action was for them. You know, what was it like for them to take social action, so that you could hear from their voice, hear their voices as well. So you will hear voices of 5 of our volunteers and interns who talk about taking social action at RAHI, how it helped them, how it didn't help them. So if you could have the video, please, and please make the volume high, because, you know, the tape quality we did it in office was not very good.
The internship helped me into thinking about my own issues as a survivor. I slowly started recollecting some memories that I hadn't thought about, and it helped me understand my own experiences and kind of put it in a different context, just to be able to make these connections. That was liberating.
I didn't come here looking for help, but being part of a group and working on an issue which had a huge impact on our lives personally was what really helped. I think was what really empowered.
It didn't hit me later on until the first day when we were getting introduced to the topic and we were watching documentary, I think Colors it was, stuff like that, and then it was finally triggering some memories in me that I didn't want triggered at that moment, because I was in a really tough time, like so throughout the month, like a lot of the vocab that we were learning and a lot of the videos we were watching and a lot of the concepts and long-term effects of CSA and short-term effects of CSA, like all the words that we were learning, my brain started putting 2 and 2 together. Like it would give me memories and I would be able to identify, oh, this was that.
One of the non-survivors who was also part of the internship felt a little isolated, and she started feeling that maybe her problems or her issues were not being given enough importance since she wasn't a survivor, and she started feeling like she was being isolated.
For me, getting into social action at that point of time was simply not the right thing to do. I was so annoyed with you folks for encouraging me to do so. I'd had it up to my neck with sexual abuse issues and just needed a break from them. It was time for me to move on. Anyways, thanks for listening. Did I just go on and on and on? Though I think I'm ready for it now.
Social action sort of transformed me and my whole approach to at least looking at child sexual abuse and also understanding people and somewhere understanding myself too. For me, it was about, it's an issue that needs to be spoken about, and I have something to say about it, and I have a story to share, so why not? So it was really, I mean, it was just that. I just thought that maybe sharing my story will probably give a powerful example.
Yes, there was one staff member that we couldn't understand because of she was dealing with her own issues, and we couldn't understand why she was irritable or aloof, but she came across as that. And at that time, we couldn't articulate what she was going through.
I think that for a lot of us survivors who come to Rahi, we do so with a high level of expectation, a sense of entitlement, so to speak. You are a center for survivors. I expect you to take care of me, cater to my needs. I want it to be done this way, and so on and so forth. And when that doesn't happen, I kind of feel let down.
It helped me in the sense that I was part of a group, and the group became a community, and I thought we became really close. And in that space, we could share a lot of things that we could not share outside. And then doing this outreach work together, where we were telling people about child sexual abuse, not just in objective terms, but also as something that we could then relate with. And what I realized in my experience at Rahi is that I think that kind of empowerment can't come to an individual alone. Like, you need a group, you need a space which enables you to feel empowered. And
Okay, so that's some of the voices that you've heard, and it's a good time for the bell to go off. Just the last slide before I invite others for their sharing and taking question and answer. Some of the things that we have now in front of us at Rahi. So building a support center, as I was talking about, Rahi has always been conceived as a support center for adult women survivors. But as more and more women now, and that, but that was 1996 when nobody was coming in for help at all. But as more and more women are coming in for help, the nature of what we are doing at Rahi and how this organization needs to be structured. Okay, so there's a lot of new things that we are doing and looking at how to build this into a support center for the organization, as a support center. Then the Firebird, for example, Firebird is a project for survivors. I don't know if any of you know the meaning of the word Firebird or have heard the term before. Has anyone heard the term before? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's a female of the phoenix, okay, so the bird that rises from the ashes, okay, which we find very apt as a concept for survivors, okay. So the Firebird program is really born out of social action, and how, so we are thinking of creating an entire training and a program for survivors to actually take social action, okay, and support it through healing. So both social action as healing is always going hand in hand at Rahi, but and then some, if people are ready, if people think this is the right time, is it a good time to actually have a conference of survivors, a national conference with survivors, for survivors, by survivors, So not that survivors are coming in only to lend a voice in one session out of 10, but actually a survivor-led and a survivor conference at a national level. Maybe India is ready for it. Certainly it was not when we started, but I think perhaps with people over here, you tell us if you're ready, then we are happy to go ahead with that. And supporting up startup ventures, as we're talking about, because now is the time when more and more people are coming. We want to encourage more and more survivors to come forward and take the issue out from experts, but of course with their own healing and the knowledge base that is required for this, and take the movement forward, because what we are looking at is building a movement of survivors of childhood sexual abuse, so that people like us can actually retire, which I'm desperate to do, because 18 years is a long time to work on one issue. So that's it.